Mira was a single mother who had learned to live with small dreams and big responsibilities. She worked in a modest craft shop in town where she arranged handmade items, cleaned shelves, and helped customers with patient smiles. Her life was not easy, but she always tried to make things stable for her young son Arvin. Whenever she looked at him, she felt encouraged to work harder. She wanted him to have comfort that she never had. They lived in a rented room above a bakery. The place was small. The windows were always warm from the smell of sweet bread, and the door creaked each time they pushed it open. Mira never complained, but she always wished for a home where they could put their belongings without worrying about rent increases or unpredictable rules from the landlord. She wanted a place where Arvin could grow with space to play and dream. One weekend, while browsing through property listings on her old phone, she came across a picture that instantly caught her attention. It was an old mansion standing on a small hill, surrounded by tall trees and a quiet road that curved like a gentle river. The building had stone walls, wide windows, and a long balcony shaded by vines that seemed to have climbed there naturally over many years. The paint was peeling and parts of the roof looked worn, yet the mansion carried an unusual charm that made Mira stare at the screen longer than she expected. What shocked her most was the price: $8,000. She blinked twice and checked again. It did not feel real. Houses in her town cost far more, even the smallest ones. She wondered if there was a mistake. She checked the description, but the price stayed the same. No long explanation. It's only a short line saying the property was being sold as it was. The next day, she contacted the agent. The man spoke politely, but gave very little information. He only said the property was old, had been empty for years, and the owners wanted to sell it quickly because no one in the family needed it anymore. When Mira asked why the price was so low, he simply answered that the mansion required repairs and that buyers usually hesitated because of its isolated location. Something about his tone felt slightly rushed, as if he wanted to complete the sale as fast as possible. Still, Mira was curious. She saved money for months and borrowed a small amount from her friend Lena. After arranging a visit, Mira took Arvin with her and traveled to the hill where the mansion stood. When they reached the property, they stepped out of the vehicle and gazed at the wide structure in silence. The air around the mansion was cooler than the town air they were used to. A light breeze moved through the branches, making a soft rustling sound. The sky was clear, with soft sunlight filtering between the tall trees that surrounded the area. Mira felt a gentle shiver on her skin. She was not frightened, only surprised by how quiet the place was. Even birds were barely audible. Arvin, however, seemed fascinated. He walked ahead on the stone path that led to the entrance and looked up at the tall balcony with amazement in his bright eyes. The front door was heavy wood, with iron handles shaped like curled leaves. When Mira pushed it open, a slow creak echoed inside, revealing a wide hall covered in shadows and dust. The air smelled old, not unpleasant, just untouched. Tall pillars supported the high ceiling. The floor was tiled with a design that must have looked beautiful years ago, but now needed cleaning. Arvin ran his hand along the railing of the staircase. The railing was carved with patterns that looked like waves. At the base of the staircase was a small engraving. It was faint, worn down by time, but Mira could still see something like a symbol. She did not recognize it. It looked neither like a letter nor a number. It was simply a shape, almost like a curled loop. The mansion had many rooms. Mira and Arvin walked through them, discovering tall windows covered with dust, wooden shelves with old books, and long corridors that seemed to stretch forever. Some door handles were loose. Some floors creaked. A few rooms had old furniture that was still in good condition. The house felt like it had stories of its own that no one had told in a long time. In the dining hall, Mira noticed something unusual. Near the corner of the room, partly hidden by a cabinet, there was a metal hatch fixed to the floor. It looked stronger than the rest of the fittings in the mansion. The metal was worn, but solid. Mira knelt beside it and brushed away dust. The hatch had no label or handle, only a thin ridge around its edges. It made her feel a little uncomfortable because it seemed out of place in such an old house. She tried to lift it, but it did not move. Arvin watched, curious, but she told him they would look at it later. She did not want him near something she did not understand. After exploring the rooms, they returned to the hall. Myra tried to imagine how the mansion would look once cleaned. It would take a lot of work, but she could see potential in every corner. She thought of Arvin playing in the yard or reading in a sunny window. She thought of waking up without worrying about rent or about someone asking her to move. Still, the quietness made her uneasy. The house felt as if it had been waiting. Not in a threatening way, but in a heavy, patient way. Like a place that kept memories in its walls. When the agent arrived to show them a few details, Mira asked again about the history of the mansion. The man spoke briefly, saying the house was built by a wealthy family long ago, but most of them had moved away. He mentioned the property had been empty for years and no one had lived there recently. Mira waited for him to say more, but he simply adjusted his papers and changed the topic. Arvin wandered from room to room with growing excitement. Every time, he discovered something interesting. He called Mira with bright energy. Mira followed slowly, observing each part of the mansion more carefully. She noticed cracks in the ceiling, marks on the walls, and old curtains that had collected dust for a long time. Even with the flaws, she felt the place had warmth hidden under its worn appearance. After finishing the tour, Mira stepped outside to take one more look. The trees surrounding the property made the mansion feel protected from the outside world. The hill was quiet with only the sound of leaves moving. She felt another small chill when the wind shifted, but she stayed calm. Arvin stood beside her, smiling as if he could already imagine living there. They returned to the small-town hotel, where they stayed for the night. Mira lay awake on the bed while Arvin slept peacefully beside her. She thought about the price, the silence, and the strange hatch. She wondered why such a large house was left untouched for so many years. The next morning, Mira signed the purchase papers. The process moved quickly. The agent seemed relieved. Myra felt a mixture of hope and nervousness, but she pushed away her doubts. She reminded herself that opportunities like this did not appear often. She had spent years wishing for a home. Now she finally had one. When they finally moved in a week later, Myra tried to make the place feel welcoming. She cleaned the main hall, washed the wooden shelves, and opened the windows to let fresh air inside. The mansion felt brighter as sunlight filled the rooms. But as the day passed, the silence returned. It was not frightening, just deep. Mira noticed small things she had missed before. A faint sound near the floorboards below the dining hall. A cold breeze from the staircase even when the windows were closed. A few old photographs in one of the drawers, showing people she did not know. That evening, she prepared a small meal in the kitchen. The walls of the kitchen were old but sturdy. Arvin sat at the table talking about how he wanted to explore the backyard the next day. Mira smiled, grateful for his excitement. She wanted this mansion to become a place of comfort for both of them. At night, they decided to sleep in the living room because the other rooms still smelled dusty. Mira laid blankets on the floor. The light from the small lamp cast soft shadows around the room. Arvin lay beside her, tired from the long day. Before closing her eyes, Mira glanced at the staircase. The symbol carved at its base seemed to look different in the lamplight. She could not explain why, but the shape appeared more noticeable when the room grew quiet. Arvin fell asleep quickly. Myra stayed awake for some time, listening to the distant sounds settling within the walls. Old houses made noises, she reminded herself. Wood expanded and contracted. Pipes shifted. There was nothing strange in that. Still, she could not ignore the feeling that something in the mansion waited to be discovered. Not something dangerous, but something hidden. She finally closed her eyes, trying to rest. Outside, the breeze moved gently through the trees. The old mansion stood quietly in the night, holding secrets that had been untouched for many years. Mira did not know it yet. But the house she had bought for $8,000 carried a history she had not been told. It carried stories, mysteries, and truths buried deeper than she imagined. She sensed only a small piece of it on her first night there. Mira woke up early the next morning feeling both tired and hopeful. The living room was brighter now, with sunlight slipping through the tall windows. Arvin was still asleep beside her, curled under a blanket, holding one corner of it the way he always did when he felt safe. For a moment, Myra looked around the room and reminded herself that this was their home now. Not a rented room, not a temporary place. A home with high ceilings, wide walls, and space she never imagined owning. The thought gave her comfort, and she felt grateful. Even though the house still had that quiet, strange feeling she could not explain. She prepared a simple breakfast and gently woke Arvin. He opened his eyes slowly, smiled, and stretched his arms. Arvin said he wanted to explore the mansion more. Myra agreed, but she wanted to clean first. She felt responsible for making every room safe before letting Arvin wander freely. Mira began dusting the study room, which was at the end of the long corridor. The study was filled with old shelves, wooden desks, and books with covers fading from age. She wiped the dust from the desk slowly. Being careful not to damage anything, on the second shelf, she found a row of framed photographs. The glass was cloudy, and the images behind them were not clear. Some showed people standing near the mansion, but the faces were too faded to recognize. The photographs gave her a strange sense of distance, as if many years had passed since anyone touched them. As she cleaned the shelf, she felt something behind the frames. It was thin, leather-bound, and slightly stiff. She pulled it out carefully and found a notebook. The cover was light brown, soft from age, and tied with a thin ribbon. Myra opened it slowly. The first page had neat handwriting. A name was written at the top. Rohan. Mira wondered who Rohan was. Perhaps someone who lived here long ago. She turned the pages gently. The writing was tidy and thoughtful, and the ink had faded but was still readable. The first few pages talked about the family that once owned the mansion. Rohan wrote about his childhood, about playing in the backyard, about the quietness of the house, even when it was full of people. He described the tall halls, the wide staircase, and the sound of wind passing through the windows during winter nights, as Mira read. Arvin entered the room and sat beside her. He asked what she found, and Mira explained that it was an old notebook written by someone who once lived in the house. Arvin leaned closer and asked her to read more. Mira turned to a page that mentioned something unusual. Rohan wrote that the mansion had a hidden room built by his grandfather. According to him, the room was created to protect something important, but he never wrote what that thing was. He also mentioned that he never saw the room himself because it was sealed. When he was young, Arvin's eyes widened with excitement. Mira felt uneasy. She did not want him imagining anything that would frighten him. So she explained that old houses often had hidden spaces, sometimes used for storage. But Arvin pointed at one part of the notebook where Rohan mentioned faint metallic sounds below the floor at night. Rohan wrote that the sounds were not loud, but consistent, and he believed they came from the sealed room. He wrote that he tried to tell his family, but they always told him the house was old and made such noises naturally. Mira paused. The night before, she thought she heard a faint sound near the dining hall. She tried to brush the thought away, telling herself again that old houses had strange noises. She read on. Rohan wrote that the entrance to the hidden room was a metal hatch near the dining hall. Myra felt her heart beat faster for a moment. She had seen that hatch and wondered about it. She remembered how it felt out of place. The notebook pages after that were filled with small details of Rohan's life. His feelings about the mansion and how he often sensed that the house kept something important hidden. But none of the pages revealed what was inside the secret room. Arvin looked at Mira with excitement and asked if they could find the hidden room. She wanted to refuse, but the notebook made her curious as well. She told Arvin they would look at the hatch again later. After she finished reading, they spent the next hour exploring the study room more. There were drawers filled with old papers, faded maps, and envelopes with no letters inside. Mira dusted every corner slowly, making the room feel cleaner and more welcoming. Arvin found a large globe with faded colors. He spun it gently and laughed when it wobbled. The sound of his laughter filled the quiet study, making the room feel lighter. After cleaning the study, Mira took the notebook with her. She wanted to read it again in the evening, maybe understand more about the hidden room. For now, she focused on clearing the bedrooms. Dust covered the old beds, and some cabinets needed repair. But Mira believed the rooms could become cozy with time. Arvin helped her by passing small tools and cloths. He enjoyed being useful, and Mira appreciated his company in the large, silent house. In the afternoon, as they worked, they heard the faint metallic sound again. It was soft, almost like something tapping lightly under the floor. Mira paused and listened. It stopped quickly, as if it only wanted to remind them that something was there. Arvin looked at her with curiosity. Mira gave a calm smile, though her heart felt tight. She told him it was probably an old pipe expanding or cooling. Arvin nodded, but Myra knew he did not fully believe it. After cleaning, they had a simple lunch and rested for a while. The house felt warmer now that sunlight filled the rooms and windows were open. Still, the silence was deeper than any place Mira had ever lived. In the late afternoon, they walked toward the dining hall. The metal hatch lay in the same corner, partly covered by the old cabinet. Mira moved the cabinet carefully. The hatch looked even more mysterious in the daylight. She knelt beside it again. The surface was cold, even though the room was warm. The edges were sealed with rust and dust. Mira ran her fingers along the edge and tapped it gently. It made a hollow sound. Arvin asked if they could try opening it. Mira hesitated. She did not want to expose Arvin to anything unsafe, yet the curiosity was strong. The notebook seemed to encourage them to understand the house better. She tried pulling the hatch, but it still did not move. It seemed locked from the inside, or stuck from years of not being opened. Mira told Arvin they would need tools to loosen it. They fetched a small toolbox from the storage room. Mira used a thin metal rod to gently scratch away the rust around the edges. It took time. The metal was old and stubborn. Dust filled the air as she worked. Arvin watched closely, handing her tools whenever she needed them, as Mira worked on the hatch. She wondered why the previous owners never mentioned anything about a sealed room or the hatch. It felt strange. Houses usually came with full information. Yet this one came with empty answers. She thought of the agent's rushed tone and lack of details. Something about it did not feel right. After almost an hour of work, the hatch loosened a little. Mira tried lifting it again. This time it moved slightly, just enough for her to feel that something was indeed underneath. Arvin smiled with excitement, but Mira decided to stop for the day. She felt tired, and she wanted to think carefully before opening anything unfamiliar. She closed the toolbox and told Arvin they would continue when she felt ready. That evening, as the sun began to set, Mira read the notebook again. She sat near the window, where the soft orange light filled the room. The trees outside moved gently with the wind. She read Rohan's words slowly. He had written about feeling cautious around the secret room, but also curious. He wrote that the mansion held something important to his grandfather, something worth protecting. Myra placed the notebook on her lap and looked out the window. She thought about the low price of the mansion, the silence, the strange hatch, and the faint metallic sounds. None of these things were dangerous, but they raised questions she wanted answered. Arvin came to sit beside her. He rested his head on her arm and asked if she thought the hidden room had something interesting. Mira told him she did not know, but she believed understanding the house would make them feel safer. As night arrived, they settled into the living room once more. Mira placed the notebook near her pillow. She looked at the staircase again, noticing the small symbol carved at the base. It looked older than the rest of the wood, as if it had been carved before the mansion was even finished. The quietness of the house felt different tonight. Not heavier, not frightening, just thoughtful, like the house was waiting for someone to understand it. Mira turned off the lamp, closed her eyes, and hoped tomorrow would bring answers. Little did she know that the notebook was only the beginning. Hidden corners of the mansion were ready to reveal truths that had been kept silent for many years. The next morning began slow and peaceful. Sunlight entered through the tall windows and filled the living room with a warm glow. Mira woke first, stretching her arms as the breeze from the open window brushed across her face. Arvin still slept soundly beside her, holding the corner of his blanket with one hand. For a few minutes, Mira watched him sleep and felt a wave of comfort. She wanted this mansion to be a safe place for him, a place where he could grow without worry. Even though the house held many secrets, Mira felt more curious than afraid. The notebook written by Rohan stayed in her mind, especially the part about the hidden room and the metal hatch. After preparing breakfast, Mira gently woke Arvin. He sat up and rubbed his eyes, then smiled when he remembered they would explore the house again. His excitement gave Mira the motivation to continue her search for answers. Once they finished eating, Mira took the notebook from the study and placed it on the dining table. The pages looked older in the morning light, almost fragile. Rohan's handwriting curved across the pages in a careful style, as if he wrote each line with deep thought. Mira turned to the page that mentioned the sound coming from beneath the floor. She read the sentence again and tried to imagine the young writer hearing noises during quiet nights. She wondered if those same sounds had continued long after he left the mansion. Arvin, standing beside her, gently tapped the table and asked if they were going to open the hatch that day. Mira admitted she was planning to try. She did not want to scare him, but she also did not want to hide her own curiosity. Arvin nodded happily. Before going back to the dining hall, Mira decided to clean the corridor leading to it. Dust still clung to the corners and edges of the wooden walls. She swept the floors carefully. Letting the broom move slowly through the quiet hall as she cleaned, she noticed something she had not seen before. Near the corner where the corridor met the dining hall, a faint mark was scratched into the wooden floor. It was small and curved, almost like the symbol at the base of the staircase. Mira knelt beside the mark and touched it gently. The wood around it was slightly darker than the rest, as if someone had carved the shape long ago. She traced the mark with her finger, wondering if it meant something. Arvin asked what she was looking at. Mira pointed to the mark and explained that she had found something unusual. Arvin leaned closer and studied it carefully. Then he said it looked like the same shape they saw on the staircase. Mira agreed. The mark was similar. It had the same gentle curve and the same looping style. She wondered if the symbol had been placed throughout the house for a reason. After cleaning the corridor, Mira and Arvin entered the dining hall. The metal hatch remained on the floor, cold and heavy. The dust around it was disturbed from the work she had done the day before. The hatch reflected a faint shine from the sunlight that entered through the tall windows. Mira opened the toolbox again and carefully worked around the edges to loosen the metal further. She was patient, making sure she did not damage the floor. Arvin sat beside her, watching quietly. The metal finally shifted again, offering a small gap that let in a sliver of air from below. Mira leaned down and felt a slight breath of coolness coming from beneath the floor. It smelled old, untouched for years, yet not unpleasant. She tried lifting the hatch with both hands. It resisted, but after another moment of force, it opened slowly with a steady, heavy sound. Dust rose from the opening as the air below mixed with the warm air in the room. Arvin leaned forward in amazement. The hatch opened to reveal a wooden staircase leading downward. The steps were narrow, but looked strong enough to support weight. The darkness below made it difficult to see anything else. Mira took a deep breath. She knew she had to be cautious. She told Arvin to stay at the edge while she checked the stairs. She stepped down slowly, holding onto the sides of the opening for support. The air below was cool and dense. The light from the dining hall only reached the first few steps. Leaving the rest in deep shadow, she paused and told Arvin to wait until she felt certain it was safe. Arvin nodded and watched with wide eyes. Mira continued downward until she reached a flat stone floor. There was a slight echo as her foot touched it. The space felt large, though she could not see the walls clearly. She took a small battery lamp from the toolbox and switched it on. The beam of light reached across the room, revealing a long underground chamber. The walls were made of stone, smooth and strong, built with careful attention. The room felt hidden, protected, and silent. Arvin called down from the hatch, asking if he could come. Mira raised the lamp and looked around once more before agreeing. She told him to come slowly and hold the sides of the stairs. Arvin descended carefully, his steps light and cautious. When he reached the bottom, he stood beside Mira and looked around in awe. The underground room stretched farther than either had expected. It looked almost like a storage place, except to clean. It's too well built for ordinary storage. On the far wall, there were more markings. Mira walked toward them, shining the lamp across the stones. The same curved symbol appeared again, carved into the wall at equal intervals. The shapes were smooth, deep, spaced neatly. Mira felt an urge to understand why the same symbol kept appearing in different parts of the mansion. She wondered if the symbol represented the family, or if it had another meaning entirely. Arvin, meanwhile, pointed to the corner of the room where a small wooden crate sat. It was covered in dust, but seemed untouched for years. Mira approached it carefully and lifted the lid. Inside were stacks of old papers tied with string. Some appeared to be receipts, maps, and notes. None of them held information that explained what the chamber was built for. They explored the space for several more minutes, searching for anything important. The underground chamber was surprisingly empty for a room that seemed so carefully constructed. Mira felt puzzled. If Rohan's grandfather built this room to protect something important, why was it empty? Then Mira noticed a faint line on the floor near the far wall. It was so faint that the dust nearly covered it. When she brushed the dust away, the line led to another shape in the stone. A shape that looked like a door or panel. Mira knelt and touched the stone. The surface felt smooth and slightly cold. The panel did not have a handle, but she could see the outline of its edges. She told Arvin to step back a little while she examined it. She pressed the panel gently, and for a moment, nothing happened. Then she pressed the edge more firmly. A soft click echoed in the room. The stone panel shifted slightly inward. Mira stepped back as it slid open a few inches, revealing darkness behind it. Arvin gasped quietly. He held Mira's arm. The opening was narrow, just wide enough for a person to slip through. Mira felt her heartbeat quicken. The space behind the panel was small, as if it held something meant to stay hidden. She raised the lamp and leaned forward. Inside the hidden space, there was a small metal box. It was old but sturdy, decorative grooves on its edges that formed the same looping symbol found throughout the mansion. Mira reached for the box gently. It was heavier than she expected. She carried it back into the open chamber, where Arvin watched with wide interest. They sat on the floor, and Mira placed the box between them. There was no lock on it, only a simple latch. Mira lifted the latch slowly. The lid opened with a quiet creak. Inside the box were several old documents and a small leather pouch. Mira removed the documents first. They were written in neat handwriting, similar to Rohan's notebook, but older. Most of the documents seemed to be records of valuables, property details, notes written by Rohan's grandfather. One page mentioned a financial vault owned by the family. The words were clear. The vault was described as important, secure, and hidden beneath the property. The page also mentioned arrangements made to protect the vault when times became uncertain. Mira felt a stir of curiosity. A vault beneath the property. It explained the underground chamber, the symbol repeated throughout the mansion, and the secrecy around the hatch. Mira unfolded another page. The handwriting was smaller, tighter, as if the writer was serious and focused. The page described how the vault was built to store something valuable. The document did not say exactly what the valuable item was. It's only that it needed the highest level of protection. Arvin asked what the documents meant. Mira explained in simple words that a vault was like a special room where people kept important things safe. Arvin nodded with understanding. Mira then opened the small leather pouch. Inside were several pieces of metal shaped like keys. Each key had a different design, with the same looping symbol carved into them. Arvin stared at the keys and asked if they opened the vault. Mira said she was not sure yet, but the document suggested that the vault existed somewhere beneath the house. Maybe the chamber they were standing in was only the outer layer. They placed the items back in the box carefully. Mira closed the lid and held it tightly. She felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. The discovery of the underground chamber and the hidden documents made the mansion feel even more mysterious. As they climbed back up the stairs into the dining hall, Mira felt a stronger sense of responsibility. She realized the mansion held a story that stretched far beyond what she had imagined. The key to understanding everything was now in her hands. The next morning arrived with a quiet sky and soft sunlight falling through the windows of the old mansion. Mira woke up early, long before Rafi, because her mind did not rest the whole night. She kept thinking about the vault, the documents, the coins, and the numbers that were far beyond anything she ever imagined. She had spent her entire life trying to survive each month, and now she was holding proof that something unbelievable was hidden in this house. The mansion felt heavy with secrets and possibilities. Myra stepped into the hallway with a calm breath. The wooden floor still made faint sounds under her feet. Even though she had been inside the mansion for some days now, she still felt chills. The place was old and worn, but it was also filled with untold stories. She went downstairs slowly and entered the living room. She looked around carefully, checking every detail. She wanted to be sure she had not missed any other clue. She picked up the folded papers from the small table near the staircase. She wanted to show everything to Rafi once he woke up. She also wanted to meet Mrs. Halen again, because she was the only person who seemed to know the history of this mansion. Mira believed that Mrs. Halen might understand what Mira had discovered. A few minutes later, Rafi walked into the room, rubbing his eyes. He looked tired but curious. Mira handed him a warm cup of tea and then placed the papers in front of him. Rafi looked at the large sheet filled with numbers and symbols. He touched it carefully. He seemed more awake now. He stared at each column, trying to understand what it meant. Mira sat down beside him and waited. Rafi finally spoke. He said it looked like old accounting work. There were names, dates, values, and codes. He believed the coins were part of something larger, maybe a collection that once belonged to someone important, someone wealthy, someone who did not trust banks or strangers. Rafi said that many years ago, people sometimes kept valuable things hidden in private vaults, inside their own properties, because they wanted complete control. That explained the hidden room. That explained the secret entrance inside the wall. Mira listened with full attention. She felt uneasy but excited. She wanted to know the truth behind everything. The mansion felt like a giant puzzle. After breakfast, Mira decided to visit Mrs. Halen. She told Rafi to stay at the house and go through the old documents again. Rafi agreed because he wanted to learn more about the numbers. Mira put the papers and a few coins in a bag and walked out. The path to Mrs. Helen's house was quiet. The old trees along the road were tall and still. Mira felt like they were watching her. When she reached the small cottage, Mrs. Halen opened the door before she even knocked. It was as if she already knew Myra was coming. Mrs. Halen invited her inside with a warm smile. Mira placed the bag on the table and slowly revealed the documents and the coins. The moment Mrs. Halen saw the items, her expression changed. Her smile faded. Her eyes widened. Mira knew something important had been triggered. Mrs. Halen took a deep breath and sat down. She said she had always heard stories about the mansion. Many people believed that the original owner was a quiet man from many decades ago. He was known as someone who never trusted anyone. People in the town used to say that he kept everything inside his house, but they never knew what everything meant. They only heard rumors. Some believed he collected rare items. Some believed he stored wealth from old trade businesses. No one knew for sure. Mrs. Halen admitted that she once visited the mansion as a child many years ago. She remembered seeing boxes, locked cabinets, and heavy drawers full of old things. But she never understood their value at the time. When the owner passed away, the mansion remained empty because his relatives lived far away. They argued among themselves, and no one cared about the house. Over time, the place became forgotten. Mira listened closely. Every detail helped complete the story. Mrs. Halen then said something Mira did not expect. She explained that the vault Myra discovered was probably placed there for a reason. The owner wanted only someone honest and brave enough to care for the house to find it. Mrs. Halen believed that Mira was that person. She said Mira had entered the mansion with pure intentions. She did not come for wealth. She came because she wanted a home for her son. That kind of intention opened doors that remained closed to others. Mira felt a cold sensation on her arms. It was not fear. It was realization. She understood now why she felt connected to the mansion. She understood why she felt chills when she first entered. Mira asked Mrs. Halen if she knew anything about the numbers written on the large sheet. Mrs. Halen admitted she did not understand accounting, but she knew one thing. The numbers were too large to be simple savings. They were something massive. She also said that the coins Mira found were extremely valuable. Collectors would pay huge amounts for them. Mira felt overwhelmed. She thanked Mrs. Halen and prepared to leave. Before Myra stepped out, Mrs. Halen placed a gentle hand on her arm. She told Mira to be careful. She told her not to tell anyone except people she fully trusted. She warned her that old properties with hidden wealth sometimes attracted attention from the wrong people. Mira promised she would stay careful. By the time Mira reached home, Rafi was standing outside the mansion waiting. He ran to her excitedly and said he had found something new. Mira hurried inside to see Rafi showed her a small notebook he found inside the back part of the vault. It was hidden behind a metal shelf. The notebook was old but still readable. Inside, there were short notes from the original owner of the mansion. Mira read every line carefully. The notes said that he gathered rare coins, precious metals, and their international values. He wrote about business trades, rise of markets, and how he planned to store everything inside the mansion. He believed that his family might not protect the wealth, so he decided to lock everything behind a secret system. The most shocking part came at the end of the notebook. It said that the total value of everything stored inside the vault was expected to rise for decades. The owner estimated that the entire collection would someday reach more than 200 million in value. Mira paused when she read that line. Her breath slowed down. She could not believe it. She looked at Rafi with wide eyes. He nodded silently. He had read the same lines. Mira felt her legs weaken, so she sat down. The mansion, bought for 8,000, held something worth far beyond her imagination. The idea alone felt unreal. She felt thankful, scared, confused, and hopeful all at once. She did not know what her next step should be. She did not want to make mistakes. As the day continued, Mira and Rafi organized the items again. They placed everything back into the vault for safety. Myra wanted time to think before making any decisions. She knew she needed proper guidance. She also wanted to make sure that she protected her son and their future. When night came, the mansion felt different. It no longer felt like an abandoned place. It felt alive, as if the house itself knew that its new owner had finally discovered its truth. Mira sat near the staircase and looked at the walls. She wondered how many stories were hidden behind them. Rafi sat beside her. He told her that their lives were about to change. Mira agreed but said that they needed to move carefully. She wanted to act wisely and keep every step safe. She wanted a stable life for them both. Later that night, Mira walked to the balcony. The cold breeze touched her face. The moonlight fell softly over the trees. The mansion that once gave her chills now gave her a quiet sense of peace. Mira believed that everything in her life had led her to this moment. She had fought many hardships, but now she could finally hope for something better. She whispered a promise to herself. She would protect her home. She would protect the secret. She would protect the future that now belonged to her and Rafi. What she did not know was that the next part of the story would bring a new challenge. A challenge that would test her courage even more than the hidden vault itself. Mira woke up early the next morning with a strong feeling inside her heart. She knew that life had already changed, but she also knew that one more test was waiting. The mansion had given her many surprises, some peaceful and some overwhelming. Now she needed to decide what to do with everything she had discovered. She wanted to protect the fortune, the documents, the coins, and the future of her small family. She also wanted to keep the mansion safe, because it no longer felt like a place to fear. It felt like a gift she was chosen to receive. Rafi joined her in the living room with a notebook in his hand. He looked more confident than before. The days spent in the mansion had made him stronger too. He sat down beside her and opened the notebook filled with notes he had made. He wrote down everything important so they could keep track of every detail. Mira smiled at him and thanked him for helping her so much. She knew she could not handle this situation alone. Rafi was young, but he understood the importance of what they found. He wanted to support his mother through every step. Myra made tea and placed 2 cups on the table. They both sat quietly and thought about what the day might bring. The mansion was silent, but not in a scary way. The air felt calm, almost comforting. Sunlight touched the dusty floor and made the old wood shine slightly. It felt like the house was finally waking up after years of waiting. After breakfast, Myra stood in the hallway and looked at the closed vault door behind the wall. She felt a strong responsibility. She was not thinking about spending the money. She was thinking about protecting it, understanding it, and using it wisely if the time came. She reminded herself that she wanted a simple and peaceful life. She was not a person who chased luxury. She only wanted stability for her and her son, Rafi. Suggested they should show the notebook and documents to a professional one day. Someone honest and educated who could understand everything without putting them at risk. Mira agreed, but she said they needed to stay careful. She did not want anyone to know too soon. She trusted only a few people. Later that morning, a car stopped in front of the mansion. Mira looked from the window and felt a little nervous. Very few people ever visited the property. The area was quiet, and most houses were far apart. She stepped outside slowly. A man stepped out of the car with a gentle smile. He looked calm and friendly. He introduced himself as Mr. Cheon, someone who handled old property records for the town. He said he came because he needed to verify some old files related to the mansion. Many documents in the town office were incomplete, and he was checking each one. Mira felt unsure at first, but the man showed his identification and explained the purpose of his visit without any pressure. She allowed him inside, but she stayed careful. She offered him a seat in the living room. Rafi stood nearby and listened silently. Mr. Cheyenne asked simple questions about when Mira bought the property and if she had discovered any old items left behind. Myra did not mention the vault or the coins. She only said that the house contained old furniture, broken cabinets, and boxes of papers that she had not gone through yet. Mr. Cheyenne nodded and wrote everything down politely. He then said something that made Mira even more alert. He said many people had forgotten the history of the mansion because it remained empty for so long. He also said that the original owner had no close family in the town. Most of his relatives lived far away. Some believed there were still unresolved records, but no one knew what was true. Mira listened, but kept her expression calm. She did not want to reveal anything. She thanked him for visiting and guided him to the door. Before leaving, Mr. Cheyenne looked at the walls of the mansion for a moment and said the place had an interesting past. He said he hoped Mira found comfort here because the house needed someone who cared. Mira gave him a polite smile and watched him drive away. After he left, Rafi asked Mira if she thought he suspected anything. Mira shook her head and said no. She believed he was only doing his job. Still, she felt more careful now. She understood that the mansion attracted attention from people who knew its history. She needed to stay responsible. In the afternoon, Mira went outside to clean the front garden. The grass was long, and dry leaves covered the ground. She wanted to make the place look alive again. She held a rake and began clearing the path slowly. She felt peaceful while working. The fresh air helped her clear her mind. While cleaning, Myra noticed something new near the edge of the garden. A small stone marker was hidden under plants and leaves. She bent down and brushed the dirt away. The stone had a carved symbol on it. It looked like the same symbol she saw inside the vault. Mira felt a sudden curiosity. She called Rafi to come outside and look. Rafi studied the stone carefully. He believed it might be part of an old marking system the owner used to guide himself. Maybe it pointed toward something else. Mira looked around the garden and thought about the possibilities. If the symbol on the stone matched the vault marking, then maybe the owner had more than one hiding place. A soft breeze moved through the trees. The garden felt old but meaningful, like it still held secrets waiting to be discovered. Mira felt a mix of hope and caution. She did not want more surprises, but she also wanted to understand the full truth. They searched the near area around the stone, but they did not find anything else. Mira decided to leave the stone in place. She believed it was part of the mansion's past, and she wanted to respect it. Later that evening, Myra and Rafi sat together in the living room. They lit a small, warm lamp and opened the notebook again. Mira turned to the last page. There were a few lines written by the original owner that she had not seen before because the page was stuck to the back cover. The lines said that he hoped someone honest would find his legacy. He wrote that wealth meant nothing without intention. He wanted his fortune to reach someone who would use it for good. His words were simple, but powerful. Mira felt emotional while reading them. She felt like the owner was speaking directly to her across decades of time. She closed the notebook gently and placed her hand over it. Rafi watched her carefully. He asked her what they should do next. Mira replied that they would take everything step by step. They would not rush. They would not fear. They would learn and understand. She said that the mansion chose them for a reason. They needed to honor that responsibility. As night came, the mansion felt warm and peaceful. The old structure seemed to breathe with life again. Mira felt safe inside it, not because of the fortune, but because she finally felt like she belonged somewhere. She had spent many years searching for stability, happiness, and a place where she could breathe without worry. The mansion was giving her that. She walked through the hallway and touched the walls gently. She whispered a soft thank you to the house. She believed the place heard her. The silence around her felt like a calm reply. Before sleeping, she checked the vault one last time. Everything was in place. She locked the entrance and covered it with the wooden panel. She then turned off the light and walked back to her room. Rafi was already asleep. His face looked peaceful. Mira smiled and sat beside him for a moment. She felt grateful for everything they had overcome. She felt proud of the courage they showed. She lay down on her bed and looked at the ceiling. She thought about the long path that brought her here. She thought about the 8,000 she spent on this house and how people around her once said it was a mistake. Now she understood it was not a mistake. It was destiny. She closed her eyes and let her mind rest. The mansion stood tall and silent in the night. It no longer felt cursed. It no longer felt cold. It felt like a guardian watching over its new owner. Mira and Rafi had finally found their home. A home filled with history, mystery, and hope for the future. The hidden vault, the old notebook, the rare coins, and the wisdom of the past were now in safe hands. Their journey was not about wealth alone. It was about trust, courage, and the strength to accept a new life when it arrived without warning. Mira held that truth in her heart as she drifted into a calm, peaceful sleep. The place that once gave her chills now gave her comfort, and the future waiting for them was brighter than anything she had ever dared to imagine.